1 second, I'm just waiting for confirmation. And we are live, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you and good evening, everybody. Welcome to this Nuneaton and Bedworth meeting of the external overview scrutiny panel. We're using the protocol for virtual meetings, and it will be recorded live and streamed, and it may be shown later on the council website. On public participation, that will be by submitted statement or by direct representation on this at the point when we reach the item on the agenda. Could I ask you to leave your microphones and cameras off until called to speak? When you finish speaking, turn them off. Any voting on recommendations will be done by the legal officer where necessary, and names will be read out. You can vote for, against, or abstain. Could I ask you to turn your mobile phones off or onto silent, please? On apologies, I have Councillor Guttridge will be substituting for Councillor Llewellyn-Nash. I think it's Neil Phillips. Councillor Neil Phillips will be substituting for Councillor T. Shepherd. And unfortunately, Councillor Rudkin has been tested positive for COVID, and she's not very well. She will be replaced by Councillor Doherty. I'm sure we all want to send our best wishes to Councillor Rudkin for a speedy recovery.
Yes, Chair.
Are there any more apologies? Good. Item 3 then is to confirm the minutes. Sorry.
All right, it's Councillor Sargent. I'm subbing for Councillor Jane Sargent.
All right. Okay. Thank you. Item 3 is the minutes then, to confirm the minutes of the meeting on the 15th of October 2020. Ingrid has notified us that she would like her name shown as being in attendance at the meeting, which she was. With that, is that agreed? No indications.
I agree, those, Chair.
Thank you. Item 4 is declarations of interest. Are there any interests other than those published? No.
Yeah, I raised my hand.
Sorry, I don't know what's going on, but something's going on. Councillor,
Yes, it's just to say that I've had prior involvement with the stroke services through the Coventry and Warwickshire Joint Overview and Scrutiny Committee. So it's just it's not an interest, but I just thought I'd better tell everybody.
I didn't catch all that. You was breaking up something terrible. Did you get that, Victoria?
If you can just repeat the
Victoria.
beginning. Sorry, can you just repeat the beginning, Councillor Golby? We've got some feedback coming from somewhere.
Yeah, it's just to say that I've had prior involvement with the stroke services reorganisation through the joint Coventry and Warwickshire Health Overview and Scrutiny Committee. So it's just to get that for transparency.
That's brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Hancock.
Yes, thanks, Chair. Can I declare a personal interest in any items that include any mention of the Mary Ann Evans Hospice, as my wife is a trustee of the hospice? Thank you.
Right, thank you. Any more declarations? Don't see any hands. Right. Item 5, public consultation. Mrs Michelle Condacor wishes to speak to items 7, 8 and 9, and Councillor Condacor wishes to speak on item 7. So we'll do that when we get to the items. Item number 6, improving stroke services in Coventry and Warwickshire. Rose Unwins is going to do the presentation. Rose, if you want to do that, please.
Hi, we've got 3 of us here. We have Chris Lonsdale, who is the Chief Finance Officer for Coventry and Rugby and Warwickshire North CCG, and we have Dr. Gavin Farrell, who is the lead clinician for the transformation project. And I believe Chris was going to...
I am, yes, if that's okay. So thank you, Chair. So the programme's come about after a number of years trying to develop the programme. This is due to collective will and benchmarking of services. So we've gone through normal prioritisation processes in terms of benchmarking, looking at the national best practice standards for stroke, looking at how this affects better health outcomes and how this would go into solving some of the unwarranted variation within the system. We're in a position where the business case outlines that we would want that the programme looks to prevent 230 strokes over a 3-year period, and this will be an ongoing benefit to completing the programme, as well as trying to reduce some of the impact of stroke patients and the suffering that's caused by having a stroke, so actually improve the outcomes through that service. The service has a number of layers. One is to make UHCW the hyperacute stroke unit for the area. Another is to get additional community supported services such that individuals are helped in the community and are able to reduce the amount of bedded rehab which is needed for stroke sufferers. It includes 2 rehab bedded units, one sited at George Eliot Hospital and the other one at the Leamington Rehabilitation Hospital. This has been a programme which has been moulded and shaped over a number of years with clinical engagement and more recently public and patient engagement, though over the whole programme we have been doing engagement throughout. It's just how we've finished the business case, which has meant the more recent public engagement. I'll hand over to Rose to go through more details on that area though.
So as you'll see from the paper, at the beginning of last year, and it feels a terribly long time ago now, I know we were scheduled to come here as soon as the consultation had finished, but obviously national and sort of global events overtook us a bit with COVID.
Hi, can I just ask Councillor Evans if he's substituting for someone or if he's here to speak on an item?
I've just noticed that myself, Victoria.
Yes, I'm substituting on behalf of Councillor Walmsley. I think Councillor Longdon said at the start, didn't he? And I was attaching to an email to you.
No, I didn't. Because
No, I don't think he mentioned it at the start. I don't think it was on the briefing note. The email from
I'm just
Walmsley.
I'm going onto my emails now just to get it up because I'm pretty sure he sent it to you. Just bear with me.
Yeah, I've just found it. It was in a different inbox. Sorry, it had gone to the junk folder for some reason.
Good morning. Just to let you know that Councillor Evans will be substitute for external OSP this week, and that was sent at 10:15 on Monday.
Okay, I've just found it. It was in a junk folder for some reason. It had gone automatically there. But I will note it. Sorry about that, Councillor Evans.
Chair, the live stream is back on, so you can resume the meeting.
Thank you. Do you want to continue, Gavin? Please.
Hi, hello, it's Dr. Gavin Farley. I'm a consultant neuropsychologist at South Warwickshire and the chair of the implementation team. So as Chris and Rose have said, this project has been, we've been working on it for quite a number of years now. It's been clinically led, and really the whole ethos of the project is to provide the best acute stroke services at UHCW and then really increase the provision of stroke rehabilitation when people leave the hospital, so they get as much rehabilitation as they need for as long as they need it at home. And heretofore, there's been quite a substantial variation in the north and the south and in Coventry about access to that provision. So the whole project is about really ensuring equity of access for all of those parts of the service, from when you have your acute stroke, coming home immediately, and then having as much rehabilitation for as long as you need it in the community. And I think we've been very lucky to have had a good working relationship with the commissioners and succeeded in getting additional funding to actually fund that pathway at a clinical level to allow that to happen. So just as we were about to start all of that, and we had all the funding agreed at the end of March, as we were all very aware, along came COVID, so everything was put on hold as all clinical services were reconfiguring to manage the COVID situation. By July, the start of July, we agreed that we would restart the implementation team, which I chair, and from that point onwards, we've been really focused on getting all the nuts and bolts of recruiting the staff into the posts in the community part of the pathway, writing all of the clinical pathways for that, agreeing all the skill sets, and really getting that good to go. And that's what we've been cited on. So we should be hopefully up and running in all areas of the county, north, south and Coventry by spring. The whole purpose of the model is to get the community element of it up and running first, to ensure we've got sufficient capacity in the system for then when we do centralise all of the stroke acute services at UHCW, we already know that we have the capacity in the system to cope with that. So that's why we're kind of going for this two-phased approach. So we'll go live across all the county in spring. We let that run for 6 months, and then we go to the no-go gateway, where we really see at this point that we have the pathway right in the community to allow us to then centralise at UHCW. So we do have this kind of safety net element in the pathway to ensure that UHCW will be able to continue to offer the best acute service they can. And that's what we're working together across all of the pathway with all of the clinicians and the NHS managers across all of the NHS providers as a network model, and it's I think it's going very successfully. Everyone is engaged across the various providers to continue coordinating a simultaneous implementation of the project on their patch.
Thank you. Okay. Any member? Can't see any hands going up.
I've put mine up, Chair.
Oh, sorry. Yes, I've got you now. I've only got it's Councillor Hancock.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I've got a question and a bit of a comment, if I may, please. And that's, I'm interested in what benefits you've seen, if any, from the recent awareness campaigns, because to build up your service need, you need to know the background to that, and it seems to be a very successful awareness campaign that has been run about stroke recently, and the report also mentions about public involvement and Health Watch and that. So again, it's about getting that that public awareness and how we can relate people to it. On the back of that, clearly, if you accept that that's been a successful campaign and it's helped you with setting up the service, I'm wondering about the sustainability and your budgets in being able to continue that awareness. I mean, that I'm guessing that was a national one, but so I'm looking at what we can do more locally as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Rose?
Yes, in terms of the campaign, I think, are you referring to the FAST campaign or a more recent Seek Help campaign around COVID? I think in a more in a general sense with promotion, absolutely, as the new service comes online, we're really keen to ensure that people know the warning signs, know how to access health care when they need it, and to continue on in that vein. And we have had public involvement through the consultation, but wider than that, we can tend to keep the patient public advisory group that we've had running still going to feed into the work as we go along to make sure that we retain that patient voice and they're involved with the project.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Tandy?
Thank you, Chair. I am aware of the fact that stroke patients are now basically all going to be going to UHCW. Then I did hear Rose mention rehabilitation, but then when Gavin was speaking, he was talking about community care. I am concerned that, well, I was of the view, and I would be concerned if it wasn't to happen, that the rehabilitation of stroke patients was to take place at the George Eliot Hospital. Obviously, that is something that we would see probably here in this locality quite useful, you know, to have that service at the George Eliot Hospital. But I only heard a quick comment from Rose that mentioned that facility.
I mentioned it at the start, Councillor. It was one of the bedded rehab facilities. Is both Leamington Rehabilitation and George Eliot. It's part of phase 2. So once the community service is in place and has been signed off, part of the enabling is to have the bedded rehab at those two facilities, which will enable the flow to go through at the acute trust at UHCW. So that is part of the plan.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Golby?
Thank you, Chair. It's just to reiterate things that I've said at the Coventry and Warwickshire Committee, where I fully support what's going on. And I can honestly say, I've said it before, but I've never been in a room with so many clinicians so enthusiastic about getting a new pathway in, because they know themselves, they're the ones that are literally, if you had a stroke, they would be the ones working on you, that they are the ones that have written this. So I wholeheartedly support this, and I can honestly see how it's going to save lives. It may be, there has been an issue brought up where people going to UHCW can't necessarily get visitors, etc., because of transport. However, when you weigh that against the fact that you are more likely to survive and come back into a local setting quicker, you have to balance that with maybe you're not going to get somebody by your bed for 3 days. It's rough with the smooth. So I think for me, that would be a trade-off that I would be willing to take. That higher chance of survival, but I might not be able to see you for a few days is something that I would, you know, I would accept that as a risk. But yeah, apart from everything else, I cannot speak highly enough of the people that have been involved with this process, because they have absolutely worked really hard to make it a success. So I'd just like to say thank you to everybody. I might not see you very much at county these days, but I'd just like to pass on my thanks while I get the opportunity.
Thank you. Is there any question to answers on that one? Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Golby's just said almost everything I wanted to say on this. It's so welcome to see something that's been led by the people, the clinicians that are actually carrying out the work with a view to improving services. Just like to add, as somebody who went to one of the consultation events, the consultation on this has been really, really good. That there was people there to explain things in simple terms and actually be prepared to listen and take on board what people were saying. We could learn a lot of this council from this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Phillips.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. As a layperson, I mean, I am in support of all this. At the present moment in time, can we just clarify, at the present moment in time, there's no rehabilitation at George Eliot, and everything is going to the University Hospital, and from there it goes out to the community, and then once this programme runs through, it'll be University Hospital, rehabilitation, community. At the present moment in time, it's University Hospital, rehabilitation there, community. Did I read that right? Shaking of head.
Oh, sorry.
I think we let
One of
Gavin
you.
pick that up in terms of the,
Sure.
of the specific clinical pathways.
Sure. So it's a little bit nuanced. So if you are a fast positive and you're within a specific time window, you're automatically brought to UHCW now, wherever you're in the county. But a proportion of people still go to Felix Holt because they have acute stroke services at Felix Holt if they haven't been brought to UHCW. So at the moment there is still a acute stroke service at Felix Holt, and there is a stroke outreach team at George Eliot as well. But the stroke outreach team are time limited. There's no early supported discharge team, and they're trying to do both of those jobs without necessarily the whole level of staffing they need to provide both of those services. So in the future, everyone with any type of stroke in any time window is going to be brought to UHCW because they will have much more options for acute treatment, and there are new developments all the time. So there are new developments coming down the track that they will be able to be delivered there, which would not be able to be delivered at a district general hospital, either Warwick or George Eliot, because they don't have the sophisticated equipment or the people to deliver those interventions. So we are kind of future-proofing all of these new wonderful interventions that are coming forward that will actually save even more lives than we're doing now, because it will be all centralised in a highly specialist service at UHCW. After the length of stay there, if the person is still needing medical care and cannot be rehabbed in the community because their level of rehab need is still quite great. So, for example, they may need to be hoisted because they aren't able to mobilize at all and they need a level of medical cover, then they can go to the 2-bedded units. So Felix Holt will be repositioned as a bedded rehabilitation unit, whereas it's an acute stroke unit at the moment. And Felden Ward at the Leamington Spa site will be the mirror of that unit for the south. And so those people who have those medical needs, because they're on a medical site, their medical needs will still be able to be met, but they will have more intensive inpatient rehabilitation to allow them then to move to the community services, which then actually have been enhanced and are able to offer a much better service for as long as the person needs it, which is not the case at the moment. Is that, I know it's a little bit complicated, is that any clearer?
I would be lying if I said yes. No. No, that is. Thank you very much, Gavin. The other thing is, Chair, the prevention of 230 strokes in 3 years by bringing anticoagulation prescribing to best practice levels. How big a decrease, I mean 230 is brilliant, but how big a decrease percentage-wise is that on what we're getting at the present moment in time? I'd like to understand that.
I think we're all thinking in terms of how many strokes that happen in a year. I think we'd have to come back to you on that, which I'm happy to do in terms of exact numbers. I I apologise for not having that one in front of us. It would be. I think what we're asking is the number of strokes it had per year and what percentage of that 230 is. So while I think we could make rough guesses, I'd be happier if I can come back afterwards with the exact numbers, if that's okay.
That's fine, Rose. Thank you very much, Chair. I'm finished now.
Thank you. Councillor Gore, you still got your hand up here. Oh, sorry. You beat me to it. You took it down. Thank you for that.
No, I did want to come back in on something actually, Chair. I did put my hand back up. It was just, can we make it absolutely clear to people that because that we don't want people in Nuneaton and Bedworth to get the wrong impression about the bedded and community rehabs. So just to be absolutely clear that not everybody will need bedded rehab. And just because they are not going to have as many bedded rehab beds at Nuneaton and Bedworth in the George Eliot, doesn't mean to say there is going to be any loss of rehab services. It will be entirely down to the need of the patient rather than anything other like cutbacks that might be it might be viewed as. So just wanted to get a view on that from the clinicians, please.
Anybody?
Yes, no, thank you, Councillor Golby. That's a really essential point. So we've modelled across the pathway numerous times how many people need to be in an acute ward, how many people could come off an acute ward if they had the appropriate services in their community, and how many people have medical needs, which means they need to be in a bedded rehabilitation facility with medical cover, but not necessarily on an acute medical ward in a hospital. And so we've looked at all of those numbers, and the numbers that came out for people who need to be in a bedded unit because the rehab need is great was about 30% of the people on the pathway. A much more significant proportion of people could be back home much earlier doing their rehab at home, with the rehab team going into them, providing the equipment at home, if there was significant investment in those services. Not to get people out of hospital quicker, but actually from our experience as clinicians, if you get home, you're with your loved ones, you're actually doing your rehab in your own kitchen. So rather than going down to the kitchen in the hospital to try to figure out how to make your cup of tea or your meal, or going into the bathroom in the hospital, you're actually doing your rehab about how to do your shower or get into your bath or make your meals in your home. And therefore, it's entirely relevant to have the team doing that with you in your home if you're medically stable enough to do that. And so that's been the whole ethos, is to get people the best amount of rehabilitation in the best location as quickly as possible. And so we're just repositioning the resources and increasing the resources in various aspects of the pathway to allow that to happen. And, you know, Felix Holt is 19 beds. It will still be 19 rehabilitation beds. So just in terms of pure bed numbers, you still have the same bed numbers dealing with stroke in Bedworth and Nuneaton as you're now. It's just they're going to be repositioned.
Thank you for that. It's nice to get the clarification.
Thank you for prompting me.
Councillor Doherty.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I just wanted to say, I mean, this is obviously a great piece of work that's gone on, but the premise is that there's going to be a number of kind of home rehab team, which is what I want to get at is how is this going to be funded, because there's going to be quite a call on this home rehab team that you're referring to that should hopefully be in place in phase 2, but it's going to be quite ask for the number of people that will need rehab, for the amount of clinicians or the physiotherapists or the OTs or speech and language that you'll need to provide that, as in your words, you say, for as long as the patient needs it. Really, I just think that's a great aspiration, and it's great if it can happen, but I just want to know what the reality is really with this chair.
Sure. Yeah. So I mean, that's a really good question. It's great to have aspirations. I mean, we as clinicians have been working on this model for quite a number of years, looking at all the skill sets, and clinicians in the whole county have been knowing this is going to happen, and they've just been waiting for it to happen to apply for these posts. So since July, we've been really working on getting all of the recruitment up and running and in place. I know that now in Coventry, for example, they are nearly at full recruitment for all of their posts, and we are in the process of beginning of recruiting into North and South Warwickshire. There are people out there, people are being attracted to the service because they're really attracted to work in a really, really well thought out service. And for the moment, we haven't found that we're hitting any barriers around recruitment. We've put a lot of work into spreading the word to all of the staff members, both in the Warwickshires and wider, that it would be a really good opportunity to come and work for us, because we're delivering, hopefully, a really gold standard pathway that is funded in a gold standard way. And that's really attractive for staff because it's not that usual. So we're getting quite a good response.
Okay, that's great. But what I'm talking about more so in relation to how, because obviously each therapist has their own workload. So how will you, you're saying I mean, how many will you be looking to recruit, for example, in Nuneaton and Bedworth?
I don't have the numbers to hand on recruitment, but actually there have been, so part of the clinical bit has been to come up with the exact numbers. We do have those numbers and they can be sent out. They have then been costed up, and actually that's been part of the prioritisation process. So there is a net cost to doing this. It's not to put a gold standard services is not a cheap option. But
it's vital.
It is vital, absolutely, and that's why it's been prioritised as part of the health and social, the system transformation programme, the system delivery programme. So actually, every NHS organisation has signed up to this as part of the STP, and therefore we have prioritised the funding as an STP to enable this to happen. So it's fully costed. We are expecting there to be need to be flexibilities, because actually when you put a service in place, it needs some changes around the edges. But actually it's a fully costed business case, and as long as we can get the staff in, that has been costed into the profile.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Councillor Gold, you still got your hand up.
Sorry, Chair, I don't know what's going on. I'll press a few buttons and see if I can get the hand down.
Okay. Yeah, do it my way. I do that. Just keep pressing buttons until something happens. Thank you. I can't see anybody else wishing to speak. That was a blast from the past. Chris, SDP, Sustainable Transformation Plan. I had nightmares about that. It's good to know anyway that after all this time, it's got to be been on the stocks for about 3 years or more possibly since it started. So it's good to see it's coming to an end. One of my major concerns really was that UHCW didn't have the capacity, but now it looks like it's moving towards that capacity, and that will be done. Over 70 strokes per year is quite high, I would have thought, but I'm assuming that's across the whole county. It's not just in Warwickshire North. So Chris is nodding, so obviously that's okay. I don't know what Warwickshire North is, but maybe Rose can put that in for us. The other thing that is on here, I saw you ultra high risk and I forgot what the words now, the normal risk, or sorry, not normal risk, the hyperacute and acute. Where do TIAs sit in that? I can't say the words. It's trans something attack. I know, but I can't get the middle word. I never can. So where does TIA sit in that? And the other thing that was concerning me, which I'm sure has been an issue or been mentioned at some point, is from knowing somebody's had a stroke to get them to UHCW from this area or North Warwickshire, because it can be quite difficult sometimes, depending on the time. So are those issues being addressed? Nobody?
Yeah. So I think in terms of the distance, that's something we did a lot of modelling on in terms of how people can get to. I think it was interesting when we raised the campaign earlier about fast, and a lot of that talked about the golden hour, when actually what transpires is the golden 4 hours, to which if you are suitable for, and I can't pronounce it either, thrombolysis. Gavin's going to pull the face in. If you are suitable to have an injection to remove the blood clot from your brain, which is part of the stroke, then as long as you can get there within 4 hours, that's fine within the timing. So when we looked at that was certainly doable, even from the sort of furthest reaches of North Warwickshire. And so that was part of it in terms of the distance. There was an investment into WMAS, into West Midlands Ambulance Service, in order to ensure that they had the additional transport available to bring potentially more people in for that slightly longer distance. So we modelled that looking from the distance between George Eliot and UHCW and adding that on. And I think it worked out as about 3 additional ambulance journeys a week. So with that has been factored in terms of what they call the door to needle time, also the call to needle time, and that does form part of it. And certainly, Gavin, I don't think we've seen any since that happened anyway. It's probably important, and I think has came out very much in the consultation, that the majority of people who had strokes were already going to UHCW. That was always the model. So in that regard, that bit hasn't changed. Gavin, do you want to pick up the other part on?
Yeah, the TI is the transient ischemic attacks.
We're all struggling on that.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean,
you can't say it.
Again, I mean, again, it's like the travel time, the ambulance time. That's a really critical clinical quality indicator that right from the start we were cited on, as Rose said, and we had all of that work done with the ambulance services to ensure that the centralisation would not impact in that and actually would improve people's access. In terms of the TIA, again, we're doing that piece of work to centralise TIA services at UHCW, so then they can have access to all of the specialist services there should they need it. And that's part of our implementation plan, and we're working on that at the moment with Anthony Kenton, who is the stroke lead at UHCW, around the time frames and how we're going to implement that TIA centralisation.
Okay, thank you. I've not got any more members wishing to speak. Thank you all three. Oh, sorry, Rose.
I just wanted to add that Chris has been looking at the numbers while we've been talking, and I can answer Neil's question now about how many people. So within the business case, we identified there's 1,200 patients a year having strokes. So 230 over those 3 years would be 77 patients per year, or 6.4% of the of patients having strokes. And I hope that helps.
It does, Rose. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you. Can I say thank you to the three of you? That's been great, and thank you for putting that report together for us. Have the best Christmas that you can and New Year in the circumstances. Keep your distance, keep your face covering on, and best of luck and best of wishes to you. Thank you for that.
Bye bye.
You're welcome to stay, by the way, but I can understand if you want to leave. Right. item 7 is the future plan for primary care update, and that's going to be Jenny, Roma, and Stephen. Are you all there? Jenny, do you want to do the presentation?
Yes, I think it might be myself. Am I leading my own presentation, or have you got it on the screen? Is somebody else putting it on the screen? Just either way is fine, just as long as I know.
We have it in the report. We have the presentation.
Okay, so do you want me to put it on screen, or shall I just read? Shall I just go through it? Shall I just go through it? Is that easier?
Can you put it on screen just for anyone who might not have a copy to hand?
Yep, let me just bear.
Thank you.
Start in the mouth, Victoria.
Sorry?
You took the words out of your mouth. If Jenny can get it up. Fine.
Yeah, I can do. Just bear with me. Sorry, I'm just opening up on the right place. Sorry, just bear with me. I'm just trying to get it up to come onto my screen so I can share it with you. There we go. Hopefully this will work. Is it sharing?
Not yet.
Do you want me to share on my screen?
Yeah, would you, if you wouldn't mind? Yes, I don't know why it's not sharing on mine, so I might not have permissions. I don't know. Yeah, I've got it's. Is it showing now?
Not yet. No. Oh, looks like it. Okay.
Right, okay, thank you very much then. So I'll just sort of take you through my slide deck then, and I'll just move you on as I go through then. So I think some time ago we presented the primary care strategy, and you asked us to come back in order to give you an update on the developments of the primary care strategy. So I'm just going to kind of run through those kind of highlights for you, if that's okay. So if we just move down to the next slide, please. So I think the first thing just to sort of start off with in terms of primary care in our patch is just to say that actually, generally speaking, we have quite high levels of patient satisfaction. I know often we hear about the concerns and issues that are raised, and obviously we take those very seriously. But what you can see from the satisfaction rate is that, broadly speaking, it shows our patients are satisfied with their GP surgery, and that compares favourably with the national average. However, the kind of key areas that are below the national average, which we are really focusing on, is around phone access and online services. So that's one of the areas that we've been sort of focusing on in terms of some of the work in terms of recent developments, etc. So can we move on to the next slide? If you remember last time when I came to speak with you, we were just at the start of the development of primary care networks, which was basically networks are groups of general practice that come together to work collaboratively to build what their offer is for their patient groups, and also it's a national sort of arrangement that's been driven in terms of encouraging primary care to work more collaboratively together and to deliver some additional services in primary care and also expand the workforce in primary care. And there's been some funding allocated to primary care networks to support the increase in capacity and resilience of primary care through primary care networks. And the primary care networks are also very much linked into the community services developments and something we call place-based teams, which is basically community provision wrapped around general practice to support more integrated offer for registered patients in primary care settings. Moving on to the next slide. So in terms of primary care networks this year, since they've been formed, they have been looking at developing a number of service specifications. One is around structured medication review, so really looking at supporting patients that are on multiple medications to optimise their medication and to ensure that that care is managed effectively. We know that people that are on a number of medications often suffer with a range of different conditions and issues, and it's important to keep on top of that. The second development has been to enhance the care home offer, which has seen GP and wider clinicians working more closely with care homes to support the provision and support that goes into care homes. The other area is around early diagnosis of cancer and supporting patients to encourage to access early cancer diagnosis. And those are some specific areas that primary care networks have been working on and been required to work on this year. In addition to that, the primary care networks are working with community service providers and also extending the number of hours of provision in terms of consultations, and that has been around support to make an impact in relation to avoidable A&E admissions and to try and support with that impact in terms of demand on our hospital services. Next slide. So in Warwickshire North, we have 5 primary care networks, and those are the networks that we have in our area, and they're made up of those numbers of practices. And what you see in the apologies, my phone's ringing. What you see in there is the number of extended hours that has been provided in addition to the normal contracted general practice provision. Okay, so next slide, please. So in terms of general practice, we've been given additional roles that we can recruit into, and that's through primary care networks, and those roles are to expand the type of workforce that's available in primary care. And sorry, I do apologise. I have to take a call. My mum's not very well, and I'm just getting a call from my mum. So if I could just pause just for a second, I do apologise.
Okay, no problem.
Apologies, I've just got somebody to sort that out. Thank you very much. I do apologise. Yes, so in the area, we have a number of roles that can be recruited to, and we've been successful in taking that forward in our area, and we have been able to recruit social prescribers and clinical pharmacists, and we've also got physician associates coming on board as well, and we've got first contact practitioners also being recruited into the area, and there is more recruitment that is going on through primary care networks, and that's really great to see the expansion of the workforce, because obviously that increases the ability of primary care to respond to the needs of the community. So next slide, please. So in terms of estates, in terms of the estate, we've got a number of projects that are going on in terms of the estate, and I'm just going to go on to this next section in terms of explaining to you some of those different things. Apologies. Okay. So this slide just tells you some of the projects that we're undertaking in some of the projects that we're undertaking in our estate, and we have a number of schemes that are ongoing, and we are basically looking at the profile of where we need to increase the capacity of primary care, working with local authority colleagues and planners in terms of ensuring that we've got the estate in the right place.
Jenny, if you've got a problem, I'm happy to pause while you do that, while you sort this.
Yeah, I do apologise. Sorry, I just need to get somebody to answer that call. Apologies. So if you would just bear with me just for 2 minutes. I do apologise, but I just need to answer this call. I'm so sorry.
I'll tell you what. Well, if we move to the next item, then you come back to you afterwards. Is that all right? Will that give you enough time? Oh, she's had to rush off. We'll have to wait then.
Sorry, I do apologise. I have an emergency situation with my mum and they've called the ambulance, so I'm afraid I'm going to have to leave. I hope you understand. I do apologise.
Absolutely. Sorry to hear that. Hope she's all going to be okay. Right. That's a shame. Sorry, Councillor. Did you want to make a point that we can put in the minutes and see if we can get it answered with Jenny or somebody else from the CCG?
Yeah, I mean, I did have a question. I don't know if there's anyone else from the CCG here.
I don't think there is. I think she's on her own.
Oh, okay, right. Not a problem. If I can just make a point for it to go into the minutes, and perhaps Jenny might look at the minutes when they're published. I wanted to raise a point on behalf of Councillor Walmsley, who I'm substituting this evening in relation to Weddington.
Point of order, Chair.
What have I said now?
No, carry on, Councillor Evans.
No, I'm going to have to start again. Sorry, I completely forgot where I was. Yeah, I'm raising a point on behalf of Councillor Walmsley, who I'm substituting tonight on behalf of the local residents of Weddington. And I wish to raise a point about the housing developments which have gone up around Weddington, which in turn has meant an additional capacity is needed for GP provision in the north of Nuneaton. And given that, you know, Top Farm is not likely to happen in the next few years, we just wondered if the CCG could at some point give councillors a briefing note on what is being done in Weddington to increase GP provision. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Could you make sure that's in the minutes, please, Victoria, and we can see if we can follow it up?
Yeah, I'll put it in the minutes and I'll send an email to her colleagues later to ask for
Thank
that.
you. I don't think there's anybody else here from the CCG. She said she was on her own.
I think she did ask for someone to be invited. Let me just have a look at my emails so I can see.
There were three of them apparently, but I think only Jenny's here, or was here.
I think Roma Holland accepted the invitation. I don't know if she's in attendance.
Roma. Roma.
See that she's there. Sorry about that, Chair. They did accept. Oh, Stephen O'Hanlon.
Hi. Yeah, I'm just joining. I was supporting with Jenny's update.
Yeah. Hi. We've just had a question from Councillor Evans because Jenny's had to leave.
Yeah.
Can Councillor Evans, do you want to repeat your question? Sorry about this.
Chair, are you okay for me to repeat that?
I am.
Okay, so I'm substituting Councillor Walmsley, who is the councillor for Weddington, and I'm just raising a point really on behalf of him and other residents in Weddington. Obviously, there's been a significant increase in housing developments in Weddington over recent years, and in turn, that's led to there being an additional capacity needed for GP provision. With Top Farm unlikely to take place in the next few years, could the CCG give us some sort of update as to what it's likely to do in order to increase GP capacity across Weddington and the north of Nuneaton? Thank you.
Am I okay to answer?
Yes, please.
Yeah, hi. So my name is Stephen O'Hanlon. I'm Head of Comms and Engagement for the CCG. As an update for Weddington, as you know, we're currently reviewing the two options, one which is standalone practice at Churchfield or an integrated health and wellbeing centre at Top Farm. We held a number of stakeholder workshops over the summer to share our thinking on the two options, look at the benefits, drawbacks and get everyone's thoughts on those. The representatives at that meeting preferred Top Farm as the option presented, and that was shared with our primary care committee and the CCG governing body. But they agreed that any decision on making a recommendation to proceed would need to be deferred until there was clarity regarding the Warwickshire County Council schools bid, because part of that financially was tied in with the Top Farm site. We also received a suggestion from one of the stakeholders that we should consider a temporary site to help address any potential future capacity issues prior to taking the full site being completed. We agreed that was a good idea, so we had a look into it and we did an options appraisal, and we found a preferred option in the St Nicholas Park Clinic, which has got capacity to offer an additional 2 rooms by late 2021, based on our current capacity projections should they be needed. We are working towards that now. We're going to continue reviewing demand and capacity early next year to see whether the position has changed during 2020 due to any changes in the housing and population growth, as well as anything that changes as a result of COVID and what we've learned from that and how we've had to change the way we work from that. But currently our thinking is that the additional capacity based on our projections on, as I say, both natural and expected population growth due to the housing and things like that, we are expecting to have an additional 2 rooms of capacity ready to go by the end of by late 2021-22, should they be needed.
Stephen, thank you very much for that response. If I may, Joe, just one more follow-up.
Just a minute, Councillor Evans, thank you. I'm getting told off all over the place here, quite rightly so. I should have brought the speakers in first, but I was quite concerned that Jenny's mum was being blue lighted to hospital. And I didn't think that anybody here from, I thought there was nobody else here from the CCG. I was proved wrong, but I want to get it back on track if I can now. Can I ask you, Stephen, if you will be able to finish off the presentation where Jenny started, or should we just abandon that and move to the speakers that I've got?
I can try my best, but I won't have answers for everything. But I'm happy to go through what I can, and obviously if there's anything that I can't answer, I'll take it back and get answers and send them across probably tomorrow, if that's okay.
Thank you for that. Councillor Condicle. Apologies, I didn't call you before.
Thank you very much. I think my wife put in to speak first, but I can go first if that's easiest.
Yes.
I put in to speak at the last meeting, and obviously this item got dropped back to this meeting. I've been following this for 9 years. I was actually part of the group that opposed the development in Wellington, but also asked for the GP surgery to be provided if it did happen. In 2011, this was, and we got a 1.2 acre site from the developer to build this GP surgery. And for the last 9 years, I've been going to CCG meetings, health scrutiny meetings, trying to get this GP surgery built. In 2016, the CCG set up a working group to get this GP built in Wellington. So it's been 5 years since the working group has started. So this has been a sorry tale of delay. We have 4,000, 5,000 odd houses coming to Wellington and St Nicholas Park, and we desperately need more GP capacity. The Grange surgery, which is just over the Leicester Road Bridge, is now stopped taking patients from the Abbey ward. So the new housing in the north of Nuneaton is actually meaning the only GP practice we've got does not take patients from the town centre anymore, or new patients. So we are increasingly having this problem. We have been promised year after year we were going to get a GP surgery on the Top Farm site, and we got ambushed by this plan to build one on Top Farm in the last year, which was totally impractical because Top Farm is, as you know, probably a long way away from being developed. It hasn't got planning permission, the school hasn't got funding, and it was myself who suggested we could use the medical centre on St Nicholas Park Drive as a temporary stopgap. But I don't want this to be a stopgap that lasts many years. I want the GP surgery built, and I want it built urgently. And the CCG, and it was the Arden practice, I don't know if you remember, Chair, the Arden group, it was back in those days we agreed to build this practice. We have the patients, we have the need. There are people moving into Wellington now who are keeping registered with their old GP because they don't want to go back of the queue, and the existing residents are getting a poorer and poorer service from the Grange practice, as obviously it's full to the gunnels. So we really do need some progress. The CCG was supposed to write to me after the last CCG meeting about a couple of weeks ago to outline where we were. And it's disappointing that the Tories are coming on pretending to be councillors from Wellington when they have failed to attend a single CCG meeting. They didn't attend the workshops. I've been passionate for 9 years to get this built, and I really would like the CCG to stop kicking the can down the road. Let's just get this built and get the people of Wellington to have a surgery and what other facilities could fit on that site. It's a beautiful site. It's ready. It's got gas and electric all to the curbside. It is ready to go. And it's only the bureaucracy and the system that is taking 9 years to get nowhere. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Michelle. Sorry I missed you before. Michelle Condicore. Are you swapping seats?
She should be pressing buttons. She can swap seats if her thing doesn't work, but she should be pressing the buttons and coming online.
I'm not getting her.
Michelle, come up here.
Okay.
I'll get her to sit in my seat. Microsoft Teams isn't very reliable when you try and do two lots. Put the headphones on.
Sorry, I don't know why mine wouldn't unmute, but it wouldn't. Not had that problem before. Yeah, unfortunately, I haven't got the papers up now that I did have on my laptop downstairs, but never mind. Yeah, my concern was really in the report papers that came through on that was about the estates, and it says pressure hotspots identified as Weddington and Hartshill. Now, it just seemed absolutely ridiculous. It was stated as if this was just a new thing that they've just suddenly discovered. whereas, as Keith has already mentioned, Weddington, it's been obvious, you know, that it's been an issue and things. The report just shows a load of jargon saying, yeah, and it's just been pushed around. And on the report, it also had the Whitestone surgery. Now they're planning to build more in Whitestone, and I can see that Whitestone is going to have exactly the same problems that we've had. They've only got a single-handed practice at the moment. The GP there is actually suspended, and it's being run by a locum. And yet they think all this talk, oh yes, we'll need capacity and what have you and things. And it's all talk, and never seem to actually get anything, you know, happening. And I really wanted, you know, some answers. Both Keith and myself have been to umpteen CCG governing body meetings, and I actually looked back and things. 12th of January 2017, so that's coming up for 4 years ago. You know, Mr. Northcote, this is from the minutes. Mr. Northcote advised that the CCG was currently engaged with developers of the Weddington site. So, you know, we're just not getting any progress, and it's absolutely crazy because, you know, it's not rocket science. Build more houses, bring in more people, more population. You need more GPs. And I mean, you know, it's unfortunate that Jenny's had to leave and things, because I really wanted to get some answers from her, because we haven't been for years on end. We've asked and asked and asked. Oh yes, we're looking at this, we're looking at that, and it just never happens. So I don't know how we actually get something to happen now, because, you know, what else can we do? We've been to every meeting. We've got things in writing that, oh yes, we're looking at that. Oh yes, we're going to do this. And then, oh no, sorry, it's changed. Oh, we're going to have another focus group and things. And, you know, well, we get nowhere.
Thank you, Michelle. Councillor Guttridge, Councillor Evans, I'm going to try and get back in step now with Stephen to see if he wants to carry on. Jenny left off. We'll move to the questions, and we'll get those questions from Councillor Condacore and Mrs. Condacore answered, hopefully. Stephen, are you ready to carry on, or should we abandon that bit? We've got the papers in front of us, but I mean, you want to carry on? That's
where did Jenny get to?
We got up to additional roles in Warwickshire North. Each PCN in Warwickshire North has one social prescriber. She was doing that.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So part of the work that we're doing for primary care across Coventry and Warwickshire, but also very specifically in the Warwickshire North Place area, which covers Nuneaton, Bedworth, and North Warwickshire, is looking at how we can support primary care by getting different roles in. A number of people will want to see their GP and only their GP and no one else. Other people are a bit more flexible. Some people don't really need to see a GP and would be better served by seeing someone else. And that's part of the reason we're getting all of these different roles in place. The social prescribers are linked in with or will be continue to be linked in with the community and voluntary sector, so that if people have issues with, for example, benefits, which the GPs end up doing quite a lot of appointments around, or things that aren't necessarily health related, they can refer them to the social prescriber, who can then refer them on to the relevant agencies, whether it's Department of Work and Pensions, Job Centre, support groups within the local community. That should, in theory, therefore save some time for the GP, who's not having to use those appointments to see people who are otherwise healthy. We have the first contact practitioner is around, I don't know all the details around that because I'm not working on that one, but that is around helping, again, triage people who go into practice if they need specific things that the GP can't necessarily help them with, or it'd be quicker to refer them via another route. They help with that as well. And we are looking to recruit a number of other roles within primary care to kind of build a more supportive network around GPs, so that they're not kind of getting the brunt of all the appointments when necessary. We're also looking at things like online appointments and online access. That's obviously come to the fore during COVID. It's something we were looking at for a long time, but COVID's kind of pushed the agenda forward a little there. The idea behind those, as always, is that for those who can use online and want to use online or telephone, we can offer those, but those who can't or won't, it should therefore free up face-to-face appointments with them, because they're not being taken up by others who would prefer a phone call in the evening, for example. So that's kind of around the additional roles. If there's anything specific question-wise around those, I can take those back.
Any member? Councillor Guthrie.
Thank you, Chair. I've sat here very patiently and I feel for Jenny with her mother. I know what people are going through. I was hoping we'd get down to the GP estate priorities for Whitestone. Like the previous two speakers from Weddington have said, we are supposed to be having a doctor's surgery when they do the development in Whitestone. And to date, the CCG have not liaised very well with the developer. We've had numerous meetings, the councillors and the MP with the developers and the planning, and we are just not getting any farther forward with the CCG. And I was hoping to get, that put on record for Jenny to take it back and see if we could get some pressure on that way. Thank you.
Thank you. Stephen, it might be better to go on to fit for purpose estate now then, because you've got Weddington and Hearts in there, but you haven't got Whitestone. So maybe you can clarify some things on that.
Yeah, sure. So with the estate then, obviously when it comes to primary care estate, there's a number of factors that we look at. We are committed to working with partners in the local population to improve health and wellbeing. With both Weddington and Whitestone, we have been engaging with local people via community advocacy groups such as Warwickshire Carver and Health Watch, and we've also been liaising with local councillors as well on those two sites. We need to make sure that we've got the right amount of primary care capacity to meet the needs of the local population, and obviously when we are looking at things like a growing population, we need to make sure we've got the sites that are fit for purpose for those as well, that are safe and can deliver high quality provision. The update on specifically Whitestones, we've held some workshops with key stakeholders, including independent, impartial patient and public representation, to look at a long list of potential options to take forwards to an options appraisal and feasibility study. So how affordable is it? Is it the right type of practice that we're looking at? What are the different options? Is it a new practice? Is it an extension to the existing practice? All those kinds of things that we're looking at the moment. And obviously the things that we're looking at from a consideration point of view are capacity and nearby housing developments. And we're also looking at how we can link it with the transforming Nuneaton work with the council, because obviously that's going to be a big thing going forward in terms of the development of Nuneaton as an area, and we want to make sure we're linked into that where we can, because the public repeatedly tell us they want service to be more joined up with between health and care. So that's something we're definitely looking at, which also links in with the reasoning that Councillor Conical mentioned around why Top Farm was suddenly considered. It was because of the links in with the health and wellbeing agenda and also the leisure strategy from Nuneaton Borough Council and Bedworth Borough Council, sorry, and again, people telling us they want us to more closely link in with health and care and the prevention agenda and helping people stay healthy and well-being and all that kind of stuff to help alleviate pressure on GPs. That's why we were looking at the Top Farm. That was one of the attractive reasons behind the Top Farm site, was the fact it would be this integrated health and wellbeing centre, which again, we are told constantly that's what people want from us, from primary care going forward. With regards to the, so I'm just flicking back and forth between a couple of things here. With regards to the Hartshill development, we're currently looking at a detailed plan for the new build practice for that area, which means we're going to be looking at the planning application process and the design of the build. We're waiting on approval from NHS England on a revised timeline for delivery through to December 2021, but we are working with both the practice and the developer about the viability of the scheme going forward. Again, COVID has brought about many changes within primary care, some good, some bad, as you might expect, and we are trying to look at what we can learn from that experience and what's changed for the better and how we can take that forward and build upon it where appropriate and where it improves patient care and well-being. So that's a thing that's we've had to consider fairly fresh for all the estates development work, because obviously our focus and our priorities have changed quite significantly as a result of that. Do you want me to answer the specific questions as best I can raised about Weddington and Whitestone by the councillors? I can answer some of those if that helps.
If you can, please. Yeah, it will.
Yeah. So with regards to Weddington, the questions raised by Councillors Kandakar, we've answered those questions repeatedly on a number of different forums, but I'll go through them again here. We have the reasoning that it take, I mean, general practice do take quite a long time to build. It's never an easy process, and unfortunately, I mean, I wish it were. And any slight delay to any part of the process can have repercussions in terms of the rest of the process. I mean, it is moving ahead now, as we know. With regards to, there's a lot to unpack in Councillor Condacar's question. So the quality of the care being delivered by the Grange, when we reviewed that last, which was earlier this year, as part of the process for the stakeholder process that Councillor Condacar was part of, the general patient feedback, both at the patient itself, on NHS websites and on like Google reviews and Facebook and things like that, were all positive. It had a positive patient voice. Survey results around things that we look for around appointment times and quality of appointments, and whether people feel they're getting to, talk about all the things they need to talk about with the GP and how quickly they can see a GP and all those kind of important things for patients. So we didn't have any concerns at the time around quality. We still don't, as far as I'm aware, but I can double check. And with regards to the capacity, we've done capacity projections for all of our practices, including the Grange. We recognise that it is, fast approaching capacity, but it's not reached capacity yet, and it won't until the end of, as I said, 2021-22, which is why we're looking at the interim practice at St Nicholas Clinic to help out with that, to get the additional 2 rooms there. It's not at capacity at the moment. So we don't. It's not like we need the additional rooms right now. And if we did, we'd obviously be moving as quickly as we could on those, but they're not needed at the moment. But we do, as I say, recognise that they are needed going forward. So we are working on that. What else was that? There was the question around Churchfield. It's not quite as ready as Councillor Condacar said. Unfortunately, it might have some of the facilities in place, but it's not quite as easy as all that, unfortunately. And there's still issues for both sites, in fact, around finances to do with Section 106 monies and how the practices are going to be funded. So even if Churchfield was ready to go tomorrow, we wouldn't be able to start the process anyway, because we're still waiting on a number of funding streams to come in to help build that. We are obviously working with the developers. They're not ready to go either, last I checked, but again, I will look into that for you. I think the last time we updated on that was probably earlier in October. I think it was the last meeting around Weddington with the developers, I believe, but I will double check on that. The other thing to note is that the delivery timelines are still on track with where they were when we started talking about this earlier in the summer with our stakeholders. They haven't been delayed as yet. Obviously, that I can't say they won't be delayed at some point, because we don't know what the future holds for that. But surprisingly, COVID hasn't knocked anything off track in that regard. We are still working to the same timeline. And we are looking to make sure the practice gets built to that schedule as expected. We are working very, very closely at the moment with the council around the funding for the school, because we do recognise that is a key part of that. We're planning the St Nicholas site in case it's needed, and we are planning for the procurement of a new GP practice service to take over at the site. With regards to Whitestone, yes, Dr. Simon is not available at the moment. That is an ongoing issue. He has got a locum in place. We are working very closely with the practice, including having weekly meetings with them to make sure that they are supported as much as we can. We have offered additional support in terms of getting another doctor in, but that has been deemed is not necessary at the moment by the practice. And with regards to the site itself, again, we're looking at all the different options around that. It's got a timeline attached to it. I don't know what it is off the top of my head, but it does have a timeline attached to it. As far as I know, it hasn't deviated off that timeline yet, despite the current situation with Dr. Simon's availability. There were some issues when Dr. Simon first was unavailable around prescriptions and things like that. But again, we worked with the practice to support them with that. And as far as I'm aware, that has been resolved and was resolved fairly quickly. It was to do with the access card that the locum had was attached to Dr. Simon's card or something. I'm not sure the technical details of it. So that's kind of where those two are. Did I miss anything? Because there was quite a lot of questions asked about both of them. If I missed anything, you don't mind putting it in the chat. I'll try and get to it. Otherwise, I'll just move on with Jenny's presentation as best I can.
Yeah, Councillor Guttridge, can I just come back for a minute with the gentleman, please, about the Whitestone? the possible building of this new surgery. You said you'd had consultations with the councillors. Well, to date, I haven't had any consultation with anybody from the CCG or any of your people. Could you tell me, have you been in negotiations or spoken to the developers? Because the developer wants to build this doctor's surgery, but he can't get any sense from yourselves. Thank you.
I mean, I haven't personally, and with regards to how these things work, we have to go through an options appraisal process. The preferred option of what's going to happen with Weddington going forward, whether it's a new build, an extension, or whatever the other options are, we haven't even got to yet. That's part of the stakeholder engagement we did earlier in the autumn, around September time, I think it was. We've been speaking with I'm trying to remember his name now, Councillor Jeff. Apologies, I can't remember his name. I'll have to look it up. And Les Caborn around this. They've been involved in that. We had conversations with them about it. The developer, again, I can't speak to what we've said with the developer, but I will find out and get back to you if that's okay, because I haven't been involved in those conversations. But again, just to be clear, we're not near that point anyway where we could go and build a new practice. That hasn't been decided as the preferred option. We haven't even done that part of the process yet.
Chair, can I just pick that up? He said Weddington. It's Whitestone that I'm on.
Sorry, yeah, Whitestone.
Thank you.
My apologies, Whitestone.
Yeah, I think it was just under the tongue. Right. Neil, Councillor Phillips, is yours on your question on the purpose of the estate or something else?
It's on the person of the estate. I think I want to thank Stephen for what he's put forward there and the work that has been going on. I just want to clarify two things, or point out two things which I believe are correct, because I sat on the working group with other stakeholders, and it was found fully in support of Top Farm, at which point Councillor Condicourt left the meeting and said he would have nothing more to do with it, which is fair enough, and also that Councillor Walmsley wasn't there at all. But obviously Stephen was, and everything he's basically said this evening, I can confirm or work with.
Thank you. Michelle, did you want to come back on something, or you just left your hand up?
Yes, I just wanted to come back on because he said the timescales are the same timeline since the summer and things, but we've had a timeline about 5 years ago, and that has never been stuck to. If they had stuck to the timeline that was initially put forward, we wouldn't be where we are now. We would actually already have a surgery and things. So I feel like we have been just completely, I don't know what the right term is and things, but we've been treated appallingly, and no one seems to be, held to account on that at all and things. They seem to have a sort of thing that it's Top Farm when Top Farm isn't a goer.
Thank you. I think you're just reiterating stuff from before. This is work ongoing, as I understand it, from what Stephen was saying and from what the report says. So you've made Councillor Garvey, are you still on the estates, or is it something else?
Sorry, Chair, I was just going to point out that members of the public don't usually get a right of reply. So Mrs. Condicourt had her 3 minutes, and that should have been it.
I know. I'm trying to be fair because it's such a hot topic, obviously in that part of the town.
Chair, that was my point of order as well.
Okay. Right. Councillor Condicourt, you've got 2 minutes.
Thank you very much. I don't want to take much more than a couple seconds. I withdrew from the stakeholder event because they were comparing the cost of a 10 practice GP surgery at Top Farm against a 10 practice GP surgery at Weddington, and we only needed 3 to 5 GPs, so they weren't comparing on a realistic basis. So 10 GPs is 25,000 people. We need a GP for 10,000 people. So it was because the process was dishonest and not giving us a realistic modelling, which is a problem. Thank you, Chair.
As I said, I think this is work in progress, so I'm going to move on. Stephen.
Yeah.
Digital first primary care.
Digital first primary care. Let me just have a quick scoot over those. Yeah, so digital first is, as I said, has been something that we've been looking at for a long, long time across the whole of the NHS, not just locally. And COVID has kind of pushed that agenda forward a bit as more people have found themselves having to use digital means to access primary care services. Obviously, the NHS England have pushed out the Nhs App, and that's been updated, and every practice should be offering the app to their patients now. And you should be able to, for example, look at your records. In some practices, some of them are coming online a bit slower than others. It's a phase rollout. We should be able to book appointments, renew prescriptions, all that kind of stuff as well. We are looking at a number of new innovative ways of doing care for people using digital technology. So, for example, we are currently working on a project with care homes where they can do remote monitoring of patients, whereby when they do their normal rounds, they will use a tablet device, which we are providing them with, to input any changes in their patient's health and well-being, which is then automatically forwarded onto a team, which can then contact, if there's any worry or if the person is sick, they can then contact the relevant party, whether it's blue light, whether it's GP, whatever it might be. So it kind of cuts out a number of steps for the care home trying to figure out who they need to get this person to for their care, so the person gets the care they need a lot quicker. That program's called Docabo. It's currently in its pilot phase. It's been rolled out to, I think, about 8 or 9 care homes, I think, and it's working well so far. It's very, very early days yet. It's only been available for the last month or so, but it's this using this new technology to try and monitor and keep track of people's well-being and make sure they get the service they want. We are looking at joining up systems where we can. I don't know too much about this because it's not my area of expertise, but we are looking at ways of joining up interoperability, they call it, between all the different systems that are used. I think in Warwickshire North we're quite lucky that they all use the same GP system, which makes things a lot easier. But we're also looking at the integrated care record, which is a fancy way of saying being able to share a person's record with their GP record with their consent when they attend hospital for an appointment. The benefit of that being that they don't have to remember all the medication they're on or what type of medication or what dosage of medication. They don't have to remember when they last had their bloods done and what the results were. The person treating them in hospital, as long as the patient gives them the permission, will be able to pull down that information directly from the patient's GP record to view all that, and it should make the visits to hospital and things like that much less stressful, because Lord knows they're stressful enough for patients, because all that information will be available at the person carrying from fingertips. Because believe it or not, most people think it already happens, but it doesn't, unfortunately. But it's something we are directly working on. It's been underway for a number of years now. The patient access stuff as well, sorry, another one is we're looking at a number of ways of helping people self-refer to services. So, for example, smoking cessation, stop smoking services, antenatal care, getting their repeat prescriptions. It'll make it quicker and easier for them, the ones that can and want to use it, freeing up time for the GP to use appointments elsewhere, or for the practice to deal with those people who can't or won't use the digital technology, because we acknowledge the fact it's not for everybody. But the ones who can and will, it will hopefully take a lot of time away from practice on things like that. And the other thing to talk about really is the benefit of one of the few benefits of COVID in terms of the NHS is, again, all the things that we've learned and the things that have come to pass as a result of COVID. So the video consultation and the telephone consultations are going well. Anecdotal feedback that we've had on these, and we are looking at doing some more in-depth research into this, but it's been positive for the most part. There has been a couple of hiccups, obviously, where people have struggled with connection or whatever it might be. But generally speaking, across the whole of Warwickshire North, the implementation of video consultation and telephone consultation has been received very, very positively. which I'm happy to report. I can move on now, if that's okay, to workforce.
Yes, please.
Great. Okay, so there's a number of different things going on with workforce, with primary care. We again, it goes back to the point I made earlier around making sure we've got a range of primary care support, not just GPs and nurses, because obviously they're for very specific things. If someone can be better seen by a healthcare assistant or an advanced healthcare practitioner or a social prescriber or all these different other things we were talking about earlier, then that is better for them and also better for the practice in terms of the amount of appointments they can have with GPs. Freed up as a result. We are doing a number of programs to support our workforce. So a couple of the ones we mentioned there are First 5 programs. So that is support for GPs in the first 5 years of their career. They get buddied up with someone who's been a GP for much longer. They are given access to resources. They are encouraged to undertake training to help support them within their first 5 years to make them as useful and robust and well trained and confident in their role as they possibly can. We have a mentor mentor GP program as well, where people are given mentors to help support them. We are giving them training around the non-clinical aspects of general practice, so things like retention, confidence in stepping into partnership roles, managerial guidance and support, how to run the business, and all that those kind of topics as well. And we've recently appointed 2 fellows specifically to Warwickshire North. So Dr. Tushar Shamji and Dr. Sonal Patel are both leaders in digital systems and fellow in leadership as well. So they're very, very skilled and experienced in training and leadership and digital, and they're going to be supporting our GPs as well to help them. So that's really good. And we've also got a primary care GP practice recruitment program called Care for Your Career, whereby we are trying to make, if a practice has a vacancy for a GP or a nurse or a practice manager or whatever it might be, we are able to advertise that nationally and try and the direction of travel with the campaign has been to make working and living in Coventry and Warwickshire as attractive as it can be. So we focus on things like green spaces, nightlife, family life, community, the opportunities within the role itself. So all the different things that people might want to be might be interested in for their career, whether it's wanting to work somewhere rural or work somewhere in a city and really help people in deprived areas, or for example they just want somewhere where they're closer to their kids or they've just moved to the area. We're using that campaign to try and make it as attractive as possible to come and live and work in this area. So that's going really, really well so far. We are hoping to get some more vacancies that we can really start pushing the advertising on that, and we're hoping it will dovetail nicely with an upcoming national recruitment campaign that NHS England are running for the NHS as well. And then the COVID-19 response, I can't talk too much to that because I don't know what all those graphs mean looking at it, but I can find out more if there's any particular questions. So the hot hub utilisation. So the hot hubs are practices which have been specifically designated to see people that are confirmed COVID positive. The idea behind them is to keep them separate and from the general population who go to their practice, to try and limit the spread of the disease. And that's worked really, really well. As you can see from the graph, the attendance at hot hubs has gone up and down pretty much in line with the national and local COVID figures, following things like lockdown and opening up lockdown and the second wave and so on. There are what was it, for 5, I think it is, hot hubs. The most commonly used is Galley Common, followed by Foeshill, GPA. So they are used quite a lot, but again, it's up and down with the trend within COVID as well. And most of the referrals are coming from GPs rather than 111, which is interesting, because the general advice still remains, if you're worried, you should call 111 first. So that looks like there's more work to do there in terms of getting that message across to people so they can get referred more quickly and appropriately rather than going via their GP. Any questions around that? Again, I'm sorry I can't say too much about that data because I've not seen that previously.
I haven't got any hands, Stephen, so if you carry on, please.
That's the end of the presentation from what I can tell.
All right. We had had a briefing note on Warwickshire North Place delivering for our local population, so you haven't got that.
I have. I can talk to that as well. One of the things I just wanted to say around primary care, which is more my realm of expertise, which is the comms, communications and engagement, is that we have done a lot of work, particularly early on in lockdown back in March, but we have continued this throughout, where we have tried our best to make sure that people have access to information, are able to. One of the biggest challenges we faced early on was people thinking that the GP practice wasn't open at all. And that was never the case. Some GP practices had to close early on for deep cleans and things like that, but it was only ever for a couple of hours. So we've done quite a lot of effort into letting people know that GP practice has been open for business the entire time, how access might be different, i.e. using telephone or video, the use of different appointment types. We've put this messaging out as many different ways as we can to try and capture everyone. So we've done on social media, for those who follow us on social media, Facebook and Twitter, etc. We've put out a number of press releases. We've tried to crowbar the message into as many other press releases about other different topics as we can. So cancer screening, spotting the difference between flu versus COVID, flu vaccinations. We've made sure that people get the message that GPs are open for business. They are happy to see people. Just it might be a little bit different when you go. We also sent out, we work with the council and public health to get messaging out via food parcels to some of the most vulnerable members of the community. And we have had information on how to access GP, cancer screening, heart attack, stroke, diabetes, mental health, pregnant women, vaccinations, and how to contact Health Watch. So a range of different support routes translated into a number of different languages, including Nepalese, Hindi, Punjabi, Gujarati, Urdu, Polish, and a couple of others sent out to people. And we are working very closely with the community and voluntary sector to push that messaging out where we can. We've also done a number of interviews on the radio, Coventry and Warwickshire Radio. We've done videos with local GPs, which we're sharing online as well. So we've tried to, as much as we can, push out the messaging that primary care is open for business and willing to see people. And it seems to be working. GP appointments are pretty much back to where they used to be in terms of utilisation, which is good because it means people aren't delaying if they've got issues or concerns. So that's great. So moving on then with regards to the place briefing. Very, very quickly, for those who aren't aware, place is what we refer to when we talk about the geography of Nuneaton, Bedworth and North Warwickshire, wrapped up into what we're calling Warwickshire North Place. This is part of the next phase of the integrated care system, where we are splitting what Coventry and Warwickshire up into 4 equal places, so Coventry, Rugby, Warwickshire North and South Warwickshire. The idea being that each of those will have a equal seat at the table and have their own, be able to use their voice and funding to make sure that the needs of the local people are met, because whereas previously some pieces of health and care work might have been done on a Coventry and Warwickshire wide basis, we're now chopping those up to be much more specific to in this case, Warwickshire North, so that the people of Warwickshire North get care that supports them and their particular needs. We're doing that through ongoing engagement with people, asking them what they want. We're doing it through the results of the excellent place-based JSNAs that the council have done, which are fantastic. If you've not seen those, they're really, really useful. Some really great insight into what people need in right down to community and village level. So Polesworth, Athelston, Waterorton, all done as specific JSNAs, so we can really hone and refine what services we offer and what services we commission as a CCG based on those needs. There are a couple of priorities for place. And these have been picked because of, again, patient feedback, national directive, the JSNAs and things like that. So they are unscheduled care, community capacity, mental health, the wider determinants of health. So that is looking at things beyond immediate health needs. So poverty, housing, social isolation and interaction, education, all the different things that can have an impact on someone's mental or physical well-being that we can look at tackling before they get ill to help, again, make sure they get support when they need it rather than by the time it's almost too late. We're also looking at long-term conditions and children and maternity. There's been a number of key deliverables done on those. So, for example, unscheduled care, we have same-day responsive services across health and care to support less than 85% bed occupancy at George Eliot Hospital and reduce the number of people who are going to ED who could have been seen elsewhere. And we're doing that by bringing together services, which has been really, really good. We've established a mental health liaison officer at each primary care network level. They have been really, really, really well received. We're looking at, for long-term conditions, we're focusing on musculoskeletal, MSK, COPD, diabetes, and we are looking at specific community specs, working with community and acute services to put in those support for those conditions. So, for example, we have trained, I think at last count, it might have changed since then, but we've trained 18 diabetes community support champions. So these are members of the local community who have stood up and said, I want to support with diabetes for whatever reason, whether it's because it affects them or their family or they're just interested in it. But they are being trained and supported and given guidance on how to be a member of the community who can help local people with diabetes needs, either around healthy eating, managing the condition, avoiding the conditions. That's been going really, really well. And the engagement side of that is led by a lady called Suman Gaiwal in my team, who's been doing a fantastic job on that. And the number of other things we're working on there in the report, as I'm sure you've seen. I won't labour the point on all of those. One of the key things that, again, that I'm working on with regards to that is the engagement of it. So we've had a couple of engagement sessions with the members of the community and voluntary sector. So Health Watch, Age UK, Carers Trust, Carver, who else? A couple of others as well has been quite well attended, these groups. And it was all about how we work together to, number one, make place a reality and start bringing some of this work forward. And number two, how we get them involved in specific pieces of work underneath those key priorities. The initial feedback is they are very, very keen to work with us, and that's fantastic because obviously they've got great links into the community in terms of making sure people are able to feed in their needs and their feedback and their concerns around services so that we can better prioritise and commission services based on those needs. But we've also had initial discussions, and I can't say too much about it yet because it is really initial discussions around how we could possibly look at thinking differently about how we commission services and what role that the community and voluntary sector can play in that as well. Are there things that they can be a provider of from a health and wellbeing point of view at place within the community to move some of that work out of the hospital into the community, but not necessarily drop it all onto GPs. It might be co-locating, for example, debt services. If we talk to Citizens Advice Bureau, co-locating them in GP practices a couple of days a week so that people who've got debt issues can be referred to them rather than going to the GP with concerns about it, again, because that does happen. And it's been a really, really positive piece of work so far. We're looking in January, we are looking at we're getting two things in January. We're looking at the clinical strategy, which is how the hospital in particular, as a starter for 10, is going to develop its priorities around the clinical strategy, and we're going to get people's feedback on that. Does it sit right? Are there the right priorities? Are we focusing on the right things? What's their feedback on them? What's their initial thoughts? How do they think they can support with that? And we're also looking at the communications and engagement strategy to make sure that we are, from an engagement point of view, we are involving the right people at the right times. We're giving people the opportunity, particularly those in seldom heard groups that don't often get a say in these sorts of things. We're working really, really hard to get those guys involved so they can have a say on how services affect them within their community, whether that's BAME communities, LGBTQ communities, gypsy and travellers, refugees and migrants, the groups that we don't often hear from with regard, but still use services to make sure the services are fit for purpose for them too. So that's been a really good piece of work so far, and we're looking to continue that in January. Very excited about that because it is something that, as I say, a number of different groups in the community and voluntary sector and patient advocates are getting involved with and very, very keen to work with us on. So that's really great. I'm conscious of the fact I'm talking really fast. Is there any questions or anything that have come out of this? I don't know how long Jenny was supposed to have on the agenda. Sorry.
Okay. You did well, actually, stepping in for Jenny. That's much appreciated. Councillor Gareth.
Sorry, Chair, which councillor did you say?
Councillor Doherty.
All right.
I'm so sorry, Chair. I thought you said Councillor Golby. Okay.
I'm going to take these teeth back to the dog.
Okay. Apologies. It was when Stephen was talking about digital first, which is a good thing. I understand that, progress has to happen, but I just wanted to give an experience, and it's not not just me, it must be other people who have experienced this. Prior to POD, which is where the prescription ordering services is now. So my local GP, he took on POD, and that's an example of making things in digital. And I know you can go online and do it, but prior to that coming in place at GP service, I would pick up prescription from the chemist, tick what I needed next time, and then go back to the chemist and pick it up. And it was done, and that was all you needed to do. Now, when POD came along, which was making it more, I understand, reducing prescription costs, etc., you have to ring up POD, stay on, probably take 2 days to try and get hold of someone on, because you're on hold for at least 20 minutes at time. And I know at the moment, COVID, self-isolation, but it was prior to that as well, which gets really infuriating for patients. Because it can't be just me who experiences that. So it's all great looking at digital and progressing, etc., which is all commendable. But it's just in practice sometimes it doesn't really work. So I'm just wondering whether POD is something that you guys have looked at really as part of the service that you're providing. Thank you, Chair.
If I can answer that then, so there's two parts to that then. So the one of the things I said earlier, and I want to make very clear, is that for most digital things, so for example, video consultation or that kind of thing, we want to make those available for the people who need them, so that those who can't use them or don't want to use them because they prefer face-to-face, it gives them more capacity to. So we are not, I just want to make it very clear that we are not kind of forcing people to go digital route for most things if they don't want to. It's just available for those who can. However, with POD, I acknowledge it's a different thing. It would be great if we could, Councillor, if we could talk at some point, maybe tomorrow or next week, around this, because the feedback you've given there around the 20-minute wait is certainly not indicative of the figures I've seen around POD. So it would be good to understand that, how that's happened, or when it's happened, or how often it's happening, because I can talk directly to the POD team to find out if what's happened there and why that's happened. Because again, as far as I'm aware, I haven't checked for a while, admittedly, but as far as I'm aware, despite COVID, the line, you shouldn't be being kept on the line for 20 minutes. That's not normal. So
I can, then I have to. And I mean, I know there's an easier way of doing it, but I'm just talking about, I know you could go online and do it. And I know that, there's different means, routes to get your prescription done. But I'm talking about people who haven't got online and, who haven't got, aren't going to go online and send emails or go on the NHS app and do it that way. People who their surgery has said, this is the way we're doing it now. The chemist has said, this is the way we're doing it now. So, poor people like me who perhaps who aren't very, tech savvy, have to pick up the phone, and then it is that long that I've had to wait on occasions. And it is very infuriating, but anyway.
No, I completely understand that, and apologies that that's happened and you've had that experience. But yeah, again, if we could talk again afterwards, that'd be great, because I need to get to the bottom of that, because that's again, that's not usual. So it'd be good to understand. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
I just want to endorse what Councillor Doherty was saying there. It can be an interminable, and they do try to get you to go offline and go for a callback. But I tried to call back once and it never worked. They never rang me back.
Okay.
So I think there are problems, but it depends. Sometimes you get straight through. Sometimes it can be quite a long time to wait.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say 20 minutes maybe, but I've never really timed it. But it does seem to be a long time. My wife gets the same problem. And we didn't have a choice. They shut us down and said, this is a system and that's it. So, right, Councillor Golby.
Thanks, Chair. Coming from an IT background in my professional life, I can't believe there's not more digital integration. The whole thing about going to hospital and having to have your consultant write a letter to your GP, I think, is an archaic system to run, and I think it should have been changed years ago. So the more that can be done on that, the better. The more we can integrate systems, then I think the easier the journey will be for the patient, and you know, we won't be dealing with things getting lost in the post or stuff like that. It's just, I think it's about time that in this day and age we are we are still relying on the post for things like that is a bit beyond me. The GP's appointments is something that I would like to bring up. I've had cause to have several appointments with the GP, and they've been either telephone appointments or telephone appointments followed up with emails, and it's worked really well because I haven't had to take a massive chunk of time out of my day to go and sit in a waiting room or physically relocate to the GP service. So I really think that is a way forward for someone like me, especially if you're busy and you've got work and kids and everything else. It really does work. So yeah, I'm all for that, and I'd like to see that continue. And I would, like I say, I would like more digital integration. We've used the pod facility as well as a family, and occasionally we've had a long wait on the phone. It's not been every time though, so I wouldn't want to put people off from using it. Whether you've got a choice to use it or not is, I think, dependent on your surgery, like has been said. But it does work well when it works. It's when it doesn't work that you probably do need to look at. So, but I'm sure you can get stats on wait times for your phones. It's any modern phone system will give you a bunch of wait times. So that's all I'd like to say. If we can continue when we get back into normal, non-COVID, if that ever happens, a non-COVID world, if we can continue with the electronic appointments, then I think we should, because I think it's a big help to busy people in their everyday lives. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Golby. We've almost got a point of agreement there. I've been advocating that for a long time. It is ridiculous that you have to go all the way to UHCW and then you come back and then you've got to wait a week for a consultant's letter to come through, maybe to the GP, maybe not, and then you've got to chase it up and all the rest of it. So yes, I did say in this day and age, why can't they just use an email or even just put the report onto an email and send it to the GP? I'm fully agreement with that. I don't see that as a problem. Stephen.
Yes.
Thank you for stepping in. I don't know if you want to make any comments on the last thing from Claire, but
again, the only thing I'd say about that is the NHS is a large beast, and like a cruise ship takes a long time to turn. But we are kind of heading in the right direction now. As I say, COVID has brought a lot of that rushing forward at a pace, which is my old background many years ago in the private sector. It was much faster paced when you wanted to make changes like that. So it does take a while for the NHS to bring new changes around, especially technology. But we are getting there now. I mean, the rollout of things like Teams and home working and video consultations and so on has been fairly rapid and worked quite well. So hopefully that's given the relevant people the steer that these things can be done more quickly than had been previously. But I'm all for that as well. So
right, thank you. Have a good festive season as best you can, the circumstances, as I said before, the others. And can you please pass on our best wishes to Jenny and hope that her mum's okay. It must have been devastating for her to hear that in the middle of a meeting. So thank you very much if you pass those on. Thank you.
Will do. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. If anyone does have any questions, I'm going to put my email in the chat. If you have any questions you didn't get to ask, feel free to email them through to me and I'll come back to you.
Now you've done it. Okay, thank you. Right. Item 8 is service update, end of life care and finance from David Elchingham. David. Oh, sorry.
Thanks, Councillor Longden.
Can I just put you on hold a minute, David? Okay. Mrs. Condacor. Try not to make the mistake again. Michelle?
It's very, very slow in reacting this evening. So I won't even try and put my camera on. Well, I was actually expecting to come in after the presentation, but so I don't know whether I'll have more questions or not afterwards. But my main thing was with the end of life bit. How has that been affected by the fact that staff are having to really cope with the patients on their own? They've not been able to have family in with all the COVID thing. So I just wondered sort of what the effects of that had been and how they were monitoring, how people felt that they'd been dealt with, in the absence of the patient, of the family being able to be there at the sort of final moments when people have died in hospital and things, and how the staff are being supported, because obviously it must be tougher on them. Thank you.
Thank you. David?
Thanks, Councillor Longdon, and apologies, I was just making a note of that so I don't forget to deal with it as we go through the presentation. So Jenny is actually a joint appointment between the CCG and the George Eliot Hospital, and she was planning to do a bit of a team tag effort with me this evening on this presentation. So I can talk to the first two issues, but the last two slides in the pack are CCG finance slides, and I may not be able to deal with all of the questions that arise associated with that. And I wonder if it would be possible for Victoria to share the slide deck, and I'll talk to that. I'm conscious that everybody's read it. I won't go through every slide in eyewater in detail. I'll just bring out some of the highlights to draw the committee's attention to, if that's okay with you. So, Victoria, is it possible to share the slides?
Can you do that?
Working?
Oh, you were in front of us.
Brilliant. Thanks, Victoria. Appreciate that. So if we go to the first slide entitled Service Update, and these are pictures of real members of staff who work at the George Eliot Hospital. And I wanted to start really by just saying how proud I am of the team at the George Eliot Hospital and all of the work that they've done through the COVID-19 pandemic and continue to do as we deal with the second wave. So at the peak of the pandemic, they were dealing with large numbers of patients, many of whom were very sick. Through the summer, we had a period of respite, but we're now dealing with the second wave. And I'm really proud that my team have stepped up to the plate. And they are tired. They've had a long haul through this, but they remain positive, and they remain absolutely committed to serving our local community and our local population. I also want to just take the opportunity to remind people of the positive impact that following the rules relating to hands, face, space, and the importance of social distancing has. And we can see in the hospital when the rules are being followed, when lockdown is applied, we see the difference that makes. And we want to thank our local community for adhering to those rules and helping us to cope with the situation that we find ourselves in. And the next slide, please, Victoria. The key message from us in terms of a service update is that we are fully open and we continue to provide routine diagnostic and elective care services alongside our emergency care services. And it really is important that people continue to seek help if they need it and to attend the hospital either in an emergency or if they've got a planned appointment to come and either see us in an outpatients clinic or to have a procedure or an operation. And this photograph is of one of our consultant surgeons on the left with a patient who was actually the first patient to use the Captain's at Tom Moore surgical unit, cutting the ribbon as you can see, a socially distant way. And it brings to life the fact that we've worked really hard to create separate pathways for patients who may have COVID and those who are attending for elective procedures and need to be managed through what we call a green pathway. And the Captain Sir Tom Moore Surgical Unit is a 30-bedded, purpose-built unit with its own operating theatre that is airlocked from the main body of the George Eliot Hospital. And it brings to life the fact that we've really thought this through and really put processes and buildings and estate in place to make sure that we are able to protect those who are coming for planned care. And it's just one example of some of the work that we've done to do that. So I do just want to make the point that we are open for business and it is safe to come to the hospital. Next slide, please. So as we came out of the first wave of COVID-19, we were set what were called phase 3 recovery targets by the government. And we were required to get our outpatient activity back to 100% of pre-COVID levels, and our day case and ordinary elective activity back to 90% of pre-COVID levels. And this slide shows the point in time where those measures were applied and the performance that we delivered, which far exceeded the standards that were set centrally. Next slide, please. I also want to bring to your attention the progress that we've made in our A&E performance. I know that this has been a concern across the patch for quite some time. And if you compare the same period last year to this, you can see in this slide that we've made some pretty impressive progress with that. Last year we were performing around 76% against the 4-hour standard, so that's the time from arrival in A&E to a decision to treat and discharge or admit, and that treatment being complete. That's the 4-hour standard. You can see that this year in October 92.6% of people were seen against that target. Now the target is 95%, so we still didn't quite hit it, but that was amongst the best performance in the country. As you will know, a lot of organisations are challenged with this, and that comes from the fact that through the COVID event we had a new leadership team arrive in A&E, and they used a short period in April when attendances fell off to redesign and improve the service. And so one of the legacies of the COVID incident is an improved A&E service. Next slide, please. So the suspension of routine services because of the incident, which began in April, so the suspension of services began in April, has created a backlog of people who are waiting for planned care. And on this slide, I've just set out some of the numbers. So there's approximately 10,000 people on the waiting list, and 43% of the waiting list have been waiting longer than 18 weeks, which is more than, which is pretty much double the same number last year. And we also have a number of people who've waited longer than 52 weeks, which is a very long wait. We're working very hard to get that under control. We are making progress. The Captain Sir Tom Moore Surgical Unit is key to that, and we have a trajectory which expects us to halve the number of long waits that we have by March next year. Next slide, please. So one of our high priority services to re-establish was the cancer service. It has been very challenging to get this back into place because clearly people were worried in the early part of our recovery about coming to hospital and potentially picking up infection while they were there. And we did, it did take us a little bit longer than we would have liked to have got that under control. At the peak of delay, so coming out of the first peak, we had 46 patients who were waiting longer than 104 days, and we've worked hard to get that down, and we now have only 2 patients. At the time this report was produced, we had only 2 patients who were at 104 days, and you can see the number ahead of that relating to 62 days. So that was 136 as we came out of the first wave, and we've reduced that to 19. So again, there's good progress there, and we're very pleased with the work that we've done to achieve that. So speaking specifically about end-of-life care, the next slide shows that the end-of-life care service at the George Eliot Hospital is rated as good. The slide has a bullet point that hasn't quite been completed there. Consultant staffing at GEH is currently 1 full-time equivalent palliative care consultant, and we also have a shared appointment with South Warwick and the community service. So essentially there's 1.5 full-time equivalent consultants, and they're supported by a fantastic end-of-life care team. And I know from sort of my history with this committee that on occasion we have come and talked to the committee with Christy Clayton, who leads that team, to bring the committee up to speed with progress. And Christy, of course, was instrumental in moving the end of life care category to good against our CQC rating. We have had some changes to sanctuary care delivery of the service that runs out of Arbury Lodge on the George Eliot site. So Sanctuary withdrew from that contract, and we as a hospital are now running that area of the hospital, and we have dedicated some beds in there for end-of-life patients. And again, I think that's a mark of progress. There's been discussion for an awful long time about the need for some ring-fenced end-of-life beds in the hospital, and we've now actioned that and done that. And of course, we continue to work very closely with Mary Ann Evans Hospice, who have some facilities on the George Eliot Hospital site. The next slide deals with the rapid response service. So as you know, we don't have any hospice beds in this part of the county. And the rapid response service was put in place to provide essentially hospice beds at home. And it's jointly delivered by Mary Ann Evans Hospice and South Warwickshire NHS Foundation Trust. It was piloted and developed through 2017, very positively received, and has now been substantiated. So it is a substantial service in the north of Warwickshire, and delivers the care that patients would receive in a hospice, in their own home, or in a residential or nursing home. The next slide is actually just a duplicate of the one I've just showed. So if you could skip through that one to the slide marked impact of COVID and funding. And this is probably the moment where I pick up the question that Mrs. Condacor asked, actually. So we obviously have seen a number of patients in end-of-life situations at the hospital who have been unable to be visited by relatives, and the staff have worked really hard to handle that. There are a number of briefs that we've heard at Trust Board and reported in other ways that set out some of the things that staff have done to help patients in their last hours of life during the COVID pandemic, when they were unable to have members of their family visit. And that includes things like members of staff sitting with patients as they passed away, holding their hands, talking to them, essentially being like a relative or friend with that patient as they passed away. And for me, there was one story in particular of a healthcare assistant who was sitting with the patient, had undertaken a FaceTime call with their relatives as this patient was nearing the end of their life. And the healthcare assistant learned that this patient had a particularly favourite song. And so as the patient passed away, she sang this song to the patient. So you can imagine that staff have been very thoughtful and very caring and very compassionate on the basis of what I've just said. And I think Mrs. Condacor's question was about how we're supporting staff as a result of that, because obviously that does have an impact on staff who are working in that kind of role. And we've been very clear with people that there's lots of health and wellbeing stuff happening around the hospital. So we've created sanctuary spaces for people to go and have a break over and above any breaks that they're required to take. We've furnished those areas with soft furnishings. We've provided drinks and food, and actually a lot of things were given to us as part of the community's response to this, and we've used that to support. We also have very good counselling and psychological service access for people. And so that's at one end of the spectrum. We've trained a number of people internally within the hospital to be able to act as listeners and to offer support to their colleagues and peers when they don't want to go and have a counselling conversation or a discussion with a psychologist. So there's a lot of stuff that we've done to provide support, both from a material perspective and also from a psychological and mental health and wellbeing perspective. And if there's more questions about that, I'd be happy to pick them up. But obviously that was one of the massive impacts of COVID on the way that we ran the hospital. And I think it's fair to say also, and Jenny is the expert in this, but the last point in this slide is important because the hospices have seen a marked drop in fundraising income as a result of the corporate pandemic, and the CCG are working with the hospice to understand exactly what the impact of that is, and to ensure that we don't lose services as a result. As I say, that's Jenny's area of expertise, but if there's any questions, we can pick those up and answer them after the meeting. And then finally, the two slides on finance, which speak for themselves in terms of the facts. And again, as I said, these are CCG finance slides, which show, I think probably the last slide is the first slide shows how income aligns. The last slide shows how the money that's allocated into the north of Warwickshire is spent in real terms, and as you can see, a huge amount of that is on acute healthcare. So I think probably the safest thing to do is to stop there and to pick up any questions that people might have. So thank you for the opportunity to speak to you this evening.
Thanks, David. Councillor Tandy. You there?
Sorry about that, yes. I am well aware, Chair, that there may be people who are not happy in the manner that pandemic has been handled nationally, but nothing, absolutely nothing, can take away the dedication of everyone at the George Eliot, from cleaners, train staff, management, about the way in which they have worked for us and with us over the last very long time. And I would like, Chair, that we should register our thanks in the minutes to David and the whole of his staff at the George Eliot Hospital for the care they have given and the care that we know they will continue to give. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I've got no other members indicating. Thank you for the presentation, David. I can, because I've got my daughter and son-in-law working in the NHS. I know that they're on their knees, but sometimes it's worse for us, and they just keep going. But nobody thinks about us. But and I think they'll be glad when it's all over as well. So, well, I know they will. So it's I can reiterate what you were saying about how very hard the NHS staff have been working over the past 7-8 months. It really is incredible what they've been doing, and just like to say, reiterate what June just said. Thank you very much. And if you can take that back somehow, I would be pleased if you would. So can I wish you all the best for the festive season. Enjoy yourself. Have a few jars while you can, and hopefully we'll see what happens when the light in the end of the tunnel comes.
Great. Thank you very
as long
much,
as nobody switches it off between now and then. Okay, thank you, David.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your kind words, and Merry Christmas to you all. Stay safe. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Right, I've just seen I don't know who it was from, somebody said they had to go. Oh, it was Michelle.
I think that was Mrs. Kondaka.
Yes, it was. Yeah, thank you. Right. The next item is the Health Watch. Chris Baines has already said that Hoonan has to go. She's got another meeting for 8 o'clock, but I'm sure he'll do his best. Chris.
Yes, thank you, Chair. My name is, for those who don't know me, my name is Chris Bain, and I am Chief Executive of Health Watch in Warwickshire. And my colleague will introduce herself very quickly.
Hello, my name is Poonam Thompson and I'm an Engagement and Outreach Officer, and I cover Nuneaton and Bedworth and North Warwickshire.
And I thought it was important that Poonam came to this meeting because her primary focus of work is in North Warwickshire and Nuneaton and Bedworth, so she would be the first point of contact by and large.
Okay.
If members had issues to raise. Victoria, can we get the quick presentation? It's only I think 4 or 5 slides. Can we get them up, do you think? Brilliant. Thank you very much.
You're on form tonight, Victoria.
Doing well, yes. So the remit we were given was to talk about the concerns and priorities of Healthwatch Warwickshire. And so I'm here to cover the broader concerns and priorities, and Poonam will be talking about her work in this part of the county. And we thought that was a reasonable mix to present today. Can I have the next slide, please? So most people know who we are, so I'll very quickly skip over this. We are a statutory organisation, and we have a remit to be the voice for everyone who uses health and social care services in Warwickshire. There are 146 local health watches in England. It's England only Health Watch. We're entirely independent. We're not part of the NHS and we're not part of local government. So we sit outside both of those arenas. And our work is primarily with health and social care providers and commissioners, so we can influence the change and make sure that the patient voice is heard as services are developed and planned. And the final part of our remit is to work with individuals, with individual patients and members of the public to help people navigate what is a very complex health and social care system. We mainly signpost, but we're also increasingly finding ourselves giving advice to people on the best way of proceeding. So can I have the next slide, please, to get on to the meat of the presentation? That's the one. So these are the, we were asked to identify the priorities that Healthwatch has. What are our concerns and what are our priorities? These concerns and priorities have come from a range of sources. We did a survey of people about their lived experience during the first lockdown, and we've taken some of the findings from that. We did a discharge project about people who were being discharged through the accelerated discharge process and what their lived experiences were from that. We also did something called the Rights Access Project, working with homeless people and other seldom heard groups to find out what their experiences were. In addition to that, we have a lot of phone calls from members of the public and from patients identifying their concerns, and we have a place on our website and through social media where people can actually make their views known online. So collectively we refer to these priorities, to these sorts of sources, as system noise. And our experience of system noise is that it identifies the issue before the data catches up with it. So what we find is there's a lot of accuracy in the system noise. So the sorts of issues that we've identified are the ones that people are talking about. Now, our priorities have been greatly affected by COVID, the same as everybody else. And these are the ones that people are talking to us about on a regular basis. The first one is around mental health, and that the levels of anxiety that we are being told about, and we talk to the Partnership Trust, the Mental Health Trust, and almost 35% of people presenting for treatment now are people that were not previously known to the service. And if you work regularly in mental health, you understand that's an extremely high number. You'd expect between 5 and 10%. It's actually around 35% at the moment, because there are people who are isolated, living alone, living with people who have mental health challenges, who have addiction and other things. So anxiety is an overwhelming theme that's come through from every source we're dealing with. And loneliness and isolation are also big issues for people, and they are beginning, I think, to have a genuine impact. The other issue that people are talking to us about, they're talking to us about the backlogs. So they're being encouraged to see the NHS as carrying on with business as usual, but there are backlogs on some treatments and delays on some treatments. And so people expecting to have genuine business as usual are running into problems with the backlogs. And some people are estimating the backlog for the NHS to be around 4 years. People are running into those sorts of issues and losing confidence, and their anxieties are beginning to show through again. And people are also talking to us on a regular basis about service changes. Are those changes going to be temporary or permanent? Are they just for the life of the pandemic? The move to digital is being welcomed by 2/3 of people, roughly, but for a further third, they are presenting additional challenges. And that issue about digital exclusion is one that we are going to have to, and we are going to be dealing with. We're going to be talking to people who feel digitally excluded about what they need to happen in order to address those issues. And the final, I guess, one under the COVID-19 legacy is what we've called the reset of services. And that's picking up issues like people have heard about the integrated care system. What will that look like? What will the priorities of that system be? What about integration between NHS and social care? Where does the patient voice sit in this new reset of services? So there's a whole range of issues there about the legacy of COVID. And our view is that services should be commissioned taking that legacy into account. Another of the priorities that we set in addition to the legacy of COVID-19 is where the patient voice sits in the new way that the NHS and social care are being structured. And so I've talked there about the system level, which is Coventry and Warwickshire. I've talked there about the place level, which is Warwickshire North in the case of Nuneaton and Bedworth. It's about primary care networks and patient participation groups and how patient voice is going to be heard in all of those places. If we are to get a service that is genuinely responsive to patient voice, then we have to ensure the mechanisms are in place for that voice to be heard at all of those levels. And the final one, I guess, for us in terms of the priorities that are coming out is around inequalities, and that is inequalities both in terms of the outcomes for people and in terms of the services being provided. The COVID-19 pandemic has been described as one that is being driven by inequalities and is creating new inequalities. So it is going to be, I think, a significant issue going forward. And a common thread that runs through all of these priorities is about communication. Communication has come up as, alongside anxiety, as one of the two main threads that runs through all of this. And that's communication between NHS and patient, one part of the NHS and another. NHS and social care, it seems to run throughout the piece. So there is a clear programme of work around communication that needs to happen. So those are the priorities we've identified that people in Warwickshire, and including Warwickshire North rather, are telling us are the issues that they're most concerned about. But turning now to Warwickshire North, Poonam will now talk about some of the work that she's doing in your part of the world.
Thank you, Chris. I have got another presentation to do, but I've just checked and I'm going to go on a bit later at 8:30, so I'll have the opportunity to talk to members about what you are hearing about what people are saying about health and social care services. So that would be good. So Victoria, if you could move me on to the next slide, please. So I'll just talk about the projects that we're currently working on. The first one is about carers and asking carers what their experience is of health and social care. So nationally, we know there is a focus on asking carers what services, what their experience of services are like, and that's something that Health Watch Warwickshire are very keen to explore. Having spoken to service providers, we understand that during the pandemic there was an extra stress and strain on carers when day centres were closed, and as Chris mentioned from the COVID survey, mental health came up as an issue across the board, but for carers as well, because the stress and worry of having to sort of look after people that they care for, as well as the impact that was having on themselves. So the project that we are currently undertaking is to understand what carers' experiences are and to identify the gap between what they expect and what is available. And then finally, what Health Watch Warwickshire can do to help with this. So we're currently at the scoping sort of stage. So we're having conversations with service providers about what carers are sort of saying to them. But it's not just those who identify as carers, it's those that may not identify themselves as carers. So people that have caring responsibilities but may not actually think, actually, I am a carer and there are these services available to me. So in terms of the engagement, it will be quite challenging to try and reach those people that don't identify as carers. So for example, myself, when I was younger, I looked after my dad. If you asked me if I was a carer, I would have said no. I would have said I look after my dad. But there are services and support available to people like myself. So it's reaching those people, and that will be part of this project. That will be really interesting. We're not looking just to focus on the pandemic. So obviously that is something that is happening. It's not, COVID is not going away, but looking long term. So what carers' experiences are like of accessing services. So we're keen for it not to be just topical, but to kind of look a bit further ahead. So the conversations that we've had so far, we've spoken to the Commissioner for all carers at the council, and this piece of work will fit in with the carer strategy that they're currently looking at the moment in the review of services. So for the next 2 or 3 weeks, I'll be doing a scoping exercise, speaking to people, and finding out the best ways to kind of engage with service providers. So the next project is Rights to Access, and this is about giving people experiencing homelessness help in accessing health and social care. This was to be launched in Nuneaton and Bedworth in North Warwickshire in February, March time. So unfortunately, the project rollout was halted because of COVID. But we are still receiving feedback from service providers about people's experience of accessing primary care. So this is sort of GP access. We have received feedback about where people have been registered with a GP, where they've been temporarily housed, they've been asked to re-register. So I'd be interested to hear if that's something that members have heard within their constituents. The next project is looking at support for care homes. So we've been calling care homes across Warwickshire, so this is a Warwickshire-wide project, to ask what they are doing during the pandemic, what has worked well. So looking at examples of best practice. We have received feedback about people who have struggled not being able to see their loved ones. in care homes and the impact that has had not just on them but on people in care homes, and that is a priority. That is a priority for Health Watch, to see what we can do to help with that. So we have got some feedback on our website which shows examples of what care homes have been doing, and some quotes as well. And then I'll talk about the discharge project, which Chris mentioned earlier. So this is something where we interviewed stakeholders about the accelerated discharge project process. So we asked them what they liked about the accelerated process and what they didn't like. And the report is on our website if you would like to read it. But to sort of summarise, what they said worked well was the fact that everybody had a common objective, which was to kind of, work well together to make sure that the patient was discharged in a timely manner and in the right setting so they don't go back into the system. And this sort of medium of using online said it worked in terms of working with partners, and it helped kind of break down those barriers and improved relationships. So that was a positive for Warwickshire that we found. If you could move on to the next slide, please, Victoria, thank you. So in terms of the work that we're doing in Warwickshire North, we've been hearing a lot of feedback about GP access. So this is people trying to phone to make an appointment, and the lengthy times that they're having to sort of wait. So we've been working with Warwickshire North CCG about this. It's a problem that they are aware of. We've been trying to we have been in touch with the GP surgeries as well to feed that back to them to try and see what we can do to help. I've been attending PPG meetings where they've been saying, patient participation group meetings, where they've been saying much the same thing. So we now have a direct link with the CCG in Warwickshire North where we feed back what we are hearing, and in the new year, because at the moment they're sort of concentrating on COVID vaccinations and flu vaccinations, but we don't want to lose the patient voice because it is important. And when a person isn't heard, they become very frustrated. So Health Watch we are speaking to the CCGs about how we can sort of get things kick-started in terms of the patient voice and linking in with the primary care networks as well. So in the new year, I'll be linking in with the primary care network leads about patient voice, and speaking to practice managers about what we're hearing, and it's about communication really, because there's a lot of work that is going on within the GP practices, but it's about kind of communicating that out to the public. Access to care homes is something that I've already mentioned, so we're hearing a lot of feedback about that. It's a very topical issue at the moment, and people are quite rightly very concerned about not being able to see the loved ones and the impact that has on them. So George Eliot Hospital, I've been having, so I've been invited to the patient forum to speak about the COVID report, linking in with David Carr. Again, he's been feeding back to me about what he's been hearing about GP access. So again, we've been linking in with the CCG about what we can do around those issues. And the COVID-19 community champion. So that's where I'm going to be doing a presentation shortly. So that's something in Nuneaton and Bedworth that we're linked into, talking about Health Watch listening to what people have said about their health and social care sort of feedback and concerns, and raising our profile at those meetings. And the final thing to mention is the COVID support group. So this is a new initiative that is being set up. And one question I wanted to sort of ask members about was the support group has been identified by the county council and mutual aid groups as something that is needed. This is for people who are living with the long-term effects of COVID. So a peer support group was something that was identified. So it's very much in the sort of scoping phase at the moment. But what I wanted to ask members was if they had any feedback from people that have been living with COVID and what they would want from such a support group, if they would find that useful. And then we could go to the last slide, please. And that's just our contact details there. Thank you.
Thank you, Burnham. Chris, have you anything to add?
No, I think that was a comprehensive run through. I mean, there are individual little campaigns running along. There have been concerns raised, for example, about the blanket use of do not resuscitate orders. And we're investigating whether there's any basis to those concerns or not. So those individual things will run alongside the sort of general themes that myself and Poonam have identified.
I thought people had to volunteer for, resuscitate or ask for it. Is that right? Or okay, thank you. Any members? No, not getting anybody indicating. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Poonam.
Chair, Councillor
yes.
Phillips has his hand up.
Is he? Oh, now I see him. A bit slow there. Councillor Phillips.
Yeah, now you see him, now you don't. Yeah. I just want to thank Chris and Poonam, obviously, for all the great work that they continue to do, Chair. That's it, really.
Okay.
Just total support.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you.
Definitely anybody else know, is there? No. Right. Okay. Thank you both for taking the time and trouble. Come out. It's or not come out. Sit at home or whatever, wherever you're located. As before, please have as good a festive season as you can, and our best wishes to you for that period. And stay safe. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Item 10, forward plan for information only. Anybody got any questions or anything to make on that? It's for information only. No. Quickly moving on. Item 11, this is a draft work programme. It's for note. Any comments on the draft work programme? Is there anybody there? Not seeing anybody's hands up.
Chair?
Yes.
Some of the items have had to be delayed, for example, from the NHS and George Eliot because of COVID and availability.
Yes.
I will email you tomorrow with the information I've been given from those.
Right. Thank you. Right. Well, that appears to be the end of business. I've had no other items notified. So can I wish you all, thank you all for your attendance. Can I wish you all a good Christmas and New Year, or as good as possible, and see you when I see you. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Good night.
Thank you, Chair, and everybody else. Merry Christmas.
Thank you. Good night, all.
Thank
you. Can you tell me when the live feed